Picture a room the size of a modern parking space. Now fill it with 6 people. Add a fire that must never go out because relighting it costs money you don't have. A bucket in the corner that serves as the toilet for everyone, and walls so damp that the wallpaper peels off in soft grey ribbons that smell like mushrooms. That's home. That's where you live, in the East End of London in the year 1888. The greatest city on earth. The capital of an empire that covers 1/4 of the planet. A place where a duchess 3 miles west of you will spend more on a single hat this morning than you will earn in a year. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists gawking at the gaslight and the fog. We're living it. One day. One woman. Everything she would have seen, smelled, carried, scrubbed, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just lying in the dark listening to descriptions of Victorian laundry water like it's the most soothing thing ever invented. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The problem starts before you're even awake. The problem is that Mrs. Fenwick's washing is due back by noon, ironed and folded, and the copper hasn't been lit yet. And if the washing is late, Mrs. Fenwick will give the work to the Irishwoman on Dorset Street who charges a penny less. And that washing is worth 2 shillings a week, and 2 shillings a week is the difference between your children eating and your children not eating. That's the whole situation. That's the knife hanging over this entire day before your eyes have even opened, and your eyes open now, in the dark, in the cold. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then the smell arrives, and you know exactly where you are because nowhere else on earth smells like this room. It comes in layers. First the sharp ammonia bite of the baby's wet napkins, soaking in a pail by the door because you can't wash them until you've done the paying washing first. Then cold smoke, cold and stale, the ghost of last night's fire clinging to everything, the blanket, your hair, the inside of your own nose. Then boiled cabbage, 3 days old, soaked into the plaster so deep it will outlive everyone who ever cooks in this room. Then something sweeter and worse underneath. The rot of the wooden floorboards where damp has been eating them for 40 years. And under everything, the smell of bodies. 6 bodies in one room, unwashed since Sunday, including yours. Welcome to Spitalfields, East London, in the spring of 1888. You're lying on a mattress stuffed with straw and rags on a wooden frame with one leg propped on a brick, because the leg broke 2 winters ago, and a new bed frame costs money, and a brick is free. Your husband John has the outside edge. Your youngest 2, Ada and little Tom, are wedged between you, sharing your warmth the way puppies do. Across the room, on a mattress on the floor, your 2 older ones, Lizzie, who is 11, and George, who is 9, sleep head to foot like sardines. Because that's how you fit 2 growing children on one small mattress. The baby, Ernest, 6 months old, sleeps in a drawer, an actual drawer, pulled from the chest and set on 2 chairs. That's not poverty being colourful. That's just what people do. Half the babies in this street sleep in drawers. Your name is Martha Reeve. You're 34 years old, and if you saw a photograph of yourself, you would guess the woman in it was 50. You were born in a village in Essex where your father followed a plough, and you came to London at 15 to go into service, and you married John at 21, and somewhere between then and now, in the space of 13 years and 6 pregnancies, of which 5 children lived, the girl from Essex disappeared entirely, and this woman took her place. This woman with hands like a man's. This woman who can carry 30 pounds of wet linen up 3 flights of stairs without stopping. Back home in Essex, they said London streets were paved with gold. You've been here 19 years. You're still looking. Somewhere outside, a church clock strikes 5. Christ Church, Spitalfields most likely. That great white steeple that towers over the whole neighbourhood like a warning. Hawksmoor built it 160 years ago, and the poor have been dying in its shadow ever since. 5 o'clock, which means you've already lost 15 minutes because the copper needs an hour to heat, and the washing needs 3 hours of work, and noon is not going to move for you. Noon never moves for anyone. You slide out from between your sleeping children, and the cold hits you like water. Not a chill, not a nip. Cold that has weight. The fire died around midnight, and the room has been losing heat ever since, and now the air is close to the temperature of the street outside, and the street outside has frost on the railings. Your breath makes a small grey ghost in the darkness. The floorboards under your bare feet are so cold they feel wet. You dress in the dark because you know where everything is, and because lighting a candle for something as trivial as dressing would be a waste. And waste is the one sin this room cannot afford. A flannel petticoat over the shift you slept in. A second petticoat over that. Your stays, laced in front, the cheap kind, the whalebone long since cracked and softened into something that barely holds a shape. Your dress, a brown thing, wool once, now more darn than dress. The elbows patched with fabric from a different dress that died before it. Thick stockings with the heels darned so many times, the darns of darns. Boots. The boots are the newest thing you own, and they are 4 years old, and they belong to a dead woman before they belong to you, bought for 9pence from the dolly shop after old Mrs. Casey went. You try not to think about that when you lace them. Mostly you succeed. Every one of these garments is doing a job. The petticoats are warmth. The stays are structure. Because a woman without stays is not a respectable woman, and respectability is currency, and you are poor in every currency there is, so you cannot afford to be poor in that one too. A slattern doesn't get washing work. A slattern doesn't get credit at the corner shop. A slattern gets talked about, and in a street like this, being talked about is a kind of slow death. Appearances matter here. They matter more the less you have. You wrap a shawl over your shoulders, cross it over your chest and knot it behind your back, the way every woman in this street wears it, because it keeps your arms free for work. Then you kneel at the hearth and begin the first battle of the day. The fire. Last night's ashes first, raked through with your bare fingers because the poker went to the pawnshop in February and never came back. Your fingers search the cold grey powder for cinders, the half-burned lumps of coal that will burn again, because a cinder used twice is a cinder you didn't have to buy. You find 8, 9, a small handful, and set them aside, and your hands are already grey to the wrist, the ash working into every crack in your skin, and your skin has a great many cracks. Washing soda does that. Years of hands in soda water, and the skin splits along the knuckles and never fully heals, and in winter the splits go deep enough to bleed, and you know women who wrap their hands in rags at night, and women who rub them with tallow, and none of it really works. The hands of a washerwoman are a document. Anyone can read your trade in them. Kindling next. A few sticks. A twist of yesterday's newspaper begged from the fishmonger. You build it small and careful, cinders around the edge. 1 match, because matches cost money, and a woman who needs 2 matches to light a fire is a woman who will need 2 of everything her whole life. That's what your mother said, and your mother is 20 years dead and still running your fingers for you. The match flares, the paper catches. You crouch there in the dark with your face close to the little flame, feeding it splinters, coaxing it, shielding it with your cracked grey hands. And this is the first work of the day, and it is already delicate, skilled, and completely invisible. No one will ever know whether this fire lit on the first match or the third. No one will ever ask. It will simply be warm in this room later, or it won't. And either way it will be your doing, and either way no one will mention it. That's the first rule of your entire life, so learn it now. The work only becomes visible when it fails. While the fire finds its feet, you fetch water. Water does not come to this room. Water comes to a single tap in the yard behind the house, one tap shared by the 11 families of this building and the 9 families of the building behind it, and the tap runs for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, because the water company sees no reason to supply the poor around the clock. And if you miss the hours the tap runs, you go without, or you beg from a neighbour, and begging from a neighbour is a debt. And debts between poor women are counted more carefully than any bank counts its gold. So you take the 2 buckets from beside the door, the big zinc one and the smaller wooden one with the split stave that weeps a thin line of water down your skirt every trip, and you go down the stairs in the dark. 3 flights, 52 steps. You know the number the way you know your children's birthdays. The stairs are narrow and the banister has been loose for a decade, and somewhere on the second landing there is a missing board that has broken 1 ankle, 2 wrists, and old Mr. Dunn's collarbone in the years you've lived here, and you step over it without thinking, without even fully waking, the way a horse steps over a rut it has known its whole life. The yard is blue dark and reamed with frost, and you are not the first at the tap. You are never the first at the tap. Mrs. Kelly is there, and Mrs. Aronson, and the widow Price with her 4 buckets, because she does washing too, and you take your place in the queue and stand in the cold with your arms crossed inside your shawl. And the tap runs its thin, reluctant stream, filling each bucket with agonizing slowness. And this is where the news of the street changes hands. Who was carried home drunk? Whose boy has been taken on at the docks? Whose girl is in trouble? Said with a look rather than a word. Who has the fever at number 11? And how many of the children have it now? And whether the mother has sent for the parish doctor? And the pause that follows that question. Because everyone standing at this tap knows the arithmetic of sending for the parish doctor, the forms, the questions, the way the relieving officer looks around your room while you answer, pricing your possessions with his eyes. Mrs. Kelly nods at you. You nod back. 14 years you've stood at this tap with these women. You have seen every one of them weep at least once. They have seen you. Your turn comes. The water hammers into the zinc bucket, so cold it makes the metal ring. You fill both buckets to 2 inches below the brim, because a full bucket slops, and a slopped bucket is wasted water, and a wet skirt in March is a cough by April. Then you carry them up. 52 steps. The zinc bucket weighs close to 40 pounds full. The wooden one perhaps 25, and you carry them together, one in each hand, because 2 trips means twice the stairs, and your shoulders take the load with a dull ache that is so familiar it barely registers as pain anymore. It is simply the feeling of morning. The handles bite into the creases of your fingers. Halfway up, on the landing where the missing board is, you set them down for a count of 10. Flex your hands, listen to your own breathing, rasp in the stairwell and pick them up again. 60 times a week you do this. Nobody has ever seen it as work. Water is simply there, in the pot, in the kettle, in the copper, the way the fire is simply lit, and the children are simply fed. You are the mechanism by which things are simply there. Back in the room, the fire's caught properly. You feed it the day's first real coal, counted out lump by lump from the box under the window. Coal is bought by the 1/4 weight from the coal shed on the corner, £14 at a time, because buying small is the most expensive way to buy anything on this earth, and the poor buy everything small. Coal by the £14, tea by the ounce, sugar by the ½ ounce, twisted in a scrap of paper, and everyone from the coal merchant to the grocer takes his extra profit from the smallness, and everyone knows it, and there is nothing whatsoever to be done about it, because you cannot buy a ton of coal without a place to keep a ton of coal and a fortune of 18 shillings to pay for it, and you have neither. The kettle goes on, and you allow yourself standing there for 1 minute while it heats, the only still moment you will have until midnight. Through the window, over the rooftops, the sky is going from black to the colour of dirty water. Chimneys are starting to smoke all down the street. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Each one a woman kneeling at a hearth with grey hands. London is being lit, fire by fire, and every single one of those fires was laid by somebody like you, and not one person in this city will spend 1 second today thinking about that. The kettle mutters. You make the tea. The tea is the 3rd brewing of these particular leaves. Fresh tea on Sunday, second water Monday and Tuesday, and now Wednesday. The leaves give up a liquid the colour of weak straw that tastes mostly of memory. You sweeten your husband's cup with a careful half-spoon of sugar and leave your own plain. And this is not martyrdom, this is mathematics. This is the same mathematics by which the meat goes to John, and the children and the crusts go to you, by which you will eat standing up today. Every meal, a slice of bread here, a bit of cold potato there, eaten with wet hands over the wash tub, because a working man must be fed to keep his strength, and children must be fed to grow, and a mother is fed with whatever is left, and what is left is what you get. And you have not sat down to eat a meal, an actual meal at an actual table, in so long that you genuinely could not name the last time. There are studies, though you will never read them, being written in your own lifetime by earnest gentlemen with notebooks, and those studies will find that the women of the poor are shorter, lighter, and sicker than their own husbands and their own sons, and the earnest gentleman will puzzle over the mystery of it. It is not a mystery. You are looking at the mystery right now. The mystery is in your teacup, plain, while his is sweet. John wakes to the smell of the tea. He sits up, coughs the deep wet cough that has lived in his chest since the winter before last, pulls on his boots and eats his breakfast, bread and dripping, the good end of the loaf, while you stand by the fire cutting more bread for the children's breakfast, and packing more again into a red handkerchief for his dinner, bread and a lump of cheese and a cold cooked onion, and he says almost nothing, and neither do you. Not because there is anger between you, but because there is nothing left over in either of you for talk at this hour, and you've been married 13 years, and there is a kind of speech in the way he takes the handkerchief from you. A grunt that means thank you. That means same as yesterday. That means we go on. John is a dock labourer, which means John may or may not work today. That's the trick of it, the beautiful cruelty of the system. He will walk to the dock gates at Wapping 40 minutes on foot, and stand in a crowd of hundreds of men in the dawn cold, pressed against an iron railing, and a foreman will stand on a platform and look out over that sea of faces, and he will call out names, or simply point, and the men he points at work today, and the men he does not point at do not, and there are always more men than work. On a good day, John is taken on and works 12 hours moving cargo and comes home with 3 shillings and sixpence. On a bad day, he walks home again by 9 in the morning with nothing, and there might be 3 good days in a week, or 1. And no man on earth can tell you in advance which it will be. Which is why Mrs. Fenwick's washing matters the way it matters. Your 2 shillings from washing, plus whatever the mangling brings in, plus Lizzie's few pence from minding the greengrocer's baby, that money is the floor. John's wages are the weather, but your money is the floor everyone stands on. Half the households in this street are the same. The gentlemen with notebooks will discover that too eventually and be very surprised. The wives of the poor are not kept women. The wives of the poor are half the economy and the half that never gets to stop. The door closes behind John. His boots go down the 52 steps, and now the day truly begins, because now you can light the copper. The copper lives in the wash-house, a lean-to shed in the yard, shared by the building, booked by arrangement, and your arrangement is Wednesday. And if you lose Wednesday to sickness or rain that never dries, or a copper that won't heat, you don't get another day, you get a quarrel. Because Mrs. Aronson has Thursday, and the Widow Price has Friday, and nobody gives up their copper day for anybody, friendship or no friendship, because the copper day is money. The copper itself is a great bowl of metal set into a brick surround with a firebox underneath, and it holds perhaps 20 gallons, and your first job is to fill it, which means the tap, which means 8 more journeys across the frost-slick yard with the zinc bucket, and by the 4th journey your shoulders have moved past aching into a kind of hot numbness, and by the 8th the front of your skirt is soaked from the split stave and clinging cold against your shins. Then the fire beneath it, laid and lit, coal you carried down yourself, and then the weight while 20 gallons of water crawls its way toward heat, and while it crawls, you sort. Mrs. Fenwick's washing came to you Monday evening in a great wicker basket with a leather strap, carried the 1.25 miles from her house near the church, on your own head and shoulder, 30 pounds of it, and now you kneel on the wash-house floor and sort it by kind, because every kind is a different labour. Whites in one pile, the sheets, the pillow slips, the tablecloths, the shirts, Mr. Fenwick's collars and cuffs, hard as bone with their old starch, colours in another, woolens in a third to be done last and gentle, because wool boiled is wool murdered, and a murdered garment comes out of your wages, flannels, stockings, and the personal linen, the underthings of the whole Fenwick family, which you will scrub intimately and thoroughly, and about which nothing more need ever be said, except that Mrs. Fenwick, who calls you Reeve, without the Mrs., and who inspects your fingernails when you deliver, would faint clean away if she had to touch a stranger's underlinen, and thinks nothing at all of a stranger touching hers. That is what money is for. Money is for making certain kinds of touching invisible. Soap next. You shave it from the bar with a knife, curl by curl into the heating water. Soap is bought by the pound, and it is dear, and there is a war in your head every washing day between using enough to get the linen truly white and using little enough to keep the profit, because if the whites come back grey, Mrs. Fenwick will hold a pillow slip up to the window light in front of you and say nothing, only look, and that look is worth a sermon, and 2 more grey pillow slips after that, and the work goes to the Irish woman on Dorset Street. So you shave a proper amount and watch the curls dissolve, and add a handful of washing soda from the jar, and the soda is what does the real work, and the soda is what has eaten your hands for 14 years, and there is a smell that rises off a copper as it comes to heat, soap and soda and hot metal, and the first release of a week of a family's dirt, and that smell is your entire life, and you don't smell it anymore. Visitors to a washhouse gag on it. You breathe it like weather. The water steams. The whites go in first, always, into the cleanest water, pushed down under the surface with the copper stick, a pole of bleached wood worn smooth as bone by decades of hands, some of them dead women's hands, and the linen swells and heaves in the water like something alive, and now you boil it, and while it boils you do not rest, because upstairs 4 children are waking up. You go up. 52 steps. Lizzie is already dressed, 11 years old and dressing her little sister with the brisk automatic hands of a girl who has been a second mother since she was 7. You cut bread. You wash faces, 1 wet rag, 4 faces, cold water because the hot is all spoken for. You comb Ada's hair and part it and look. The way you look every morning, for the moving speck that means knits, because knits mean the knit nurse at the school, and the knit nurse means the whole street knowing, and the whole street knowing means shame, and shame again is currency, and you cannot afford the loss. George's boots have holes and you fold fresh paper into them, brown paper saved from the sugar, smoothed flat under the mattress overnight, and the paper will be soaked through by 10, and he will sit in school all day with wet feet, and there is nothing else to be done. Cobbler's mending cost 8 pence, and 8 pence is not there. Lizzie takes Ada by the hand and George by the shoulder, and herds them off toward the board school on Chicksand Street, where the lessons are free now, free by law, and thank God for it. Though the school fines you a penny when they're absent and sends a man around to ask why. And you have feelings about that man that you keep to yourself. The baby stays. The baby goes with you. You carry Ernest down to the washhouse on your hip, and this is how you will work now, and how you have worked through 5 babies, 1 arm for the work and 1 hip for the child, and when both arms are needed he goes into the empty wicker basket on a folded shawl where you can see him, and he watches the steam curl up toward the rafters with the huge damp solemnity of babies. And the washhouse is warm at least, warmest place he'll be all day. And this is the entire history of working women in one small picture, the baby in the basket beside the copper, minded and not minded, in view and out of arms, because his mother's arms are earning his bread, and now the real work. Now the part that no one who has not done it has ever once imagined correctly. The boiled whites come out of the copper on the end of the stick, steaming, heavy, past believing. A double bed sheet, dry, weighs perhaps 2 pounds. The same sheet boiling wet weighs 10 or 12, and it comes out of the water fighting you, hanging off the stick in a scalding mass, wanting to slide back in, wanting to touch your arms, and it is just off the boil, and you swing it in one practiced movement that took you 2 years to learn, and one blistered forearm you still carry the mark of, into the first rinsing tub, then the next sheet, then the next. Your face runs with sweat and steam until you cannot tell which is which. The washhouse fills with fog. Your hair escapes its pins and pastes itself to your forehead and neck. The windows, such as they are, go white. Then the washboard. For everything the boiling didn't shift. You bend over the tub and understand what bending means here. It means bent, at the waist, at a right angle, your face over the water, and you take each garment and rub it, soaped, against the ridged zinc face of the board, knuckles down, using the weight of your shoulders, and the collars need it hardest. The grime of a man's neck ground into linen for a week, and the cuffs, and the hems of Mrs. Fenwick's petticoats where they've dragged the same filthy streets your own hems drag, because horse dung and coal mud do not care what a woman's husband earns. Rub, turn, rub, dip, wring, drop, next. Rub, turn, rub, dip, wring, drop, next. Your knuckles graze the zinc, and the soda water finds every crack in them, and the sting is bright and small and constant, like a choir of tiny bites, and after the first hour your hands go a boiled scarlet to the wrist, and stay that way, and after the second hour your lower back begins to send up its long, slow flare, the one that will still be burning when you lie down tonight, the one that all the women at the tap share and none of them mention. Because what would be the point? It would be like mentioning that water is wet. And here is the thing I need you to understand. The thing the notebooks and the sermons and the paintings of rosy washerwomen all missed. This is not a chore. This is an industry. A single hand laundry like yours, one woman, one copper, will move something like 200 pounds of wet cloth in a day, lifting it, wringing it, carrying it, hauling it, over and over, which is more sheer weight than many dock labourers' shift, and the dock labourer's day is called work and written about in Parliament, and your day is called washing and written about nowhere. When the doctors of this era examine worn-out women, they will invent names for what they find. They will call it hysteria. They will call it a weakness of the female constitution. They will be looking at tendons ruined by wringing, and backs ruined by tubs and hearts strained by stairs, at plain industrial injury. And they will call it nerves, and prescribe rest, and rest costs money. So no one you have ever known has taken that particular medicine. The wringing is the worst of it, so let's do the wringing. A sheet, rinsed, has to be got as dry as arms can get it before it hangs, or it will hang wet for 2 days and souring means washing it again for nothing. So you take one end and twist it into a rope, and then you keep twisting, against the whole sullen weight of the water, hand over hand, the linen rope hardening and cording under your grip until it's like twisting a hawser, and the water sheets down over your wrists and forearms and drips from your elbows, and something in the base of your thumbs, in the meat of your palms, gives its little warning cry, the cry it has given for years now, the one that means someday, Martha, we will stop doing this, and you will still need us to. You know women of 50 whose hands have curled into loose claws that can no longer fasten a button. You have seen your own future, and it is standing at the tap most mornings, and you fill her bucket for her when the queue allows, and neither of you says why. The bluing goes into the final rinse, a little muslin bag of blue powder swirled through the water until it's the colour of a winter sky. And it's a trick, an honest trick, a whisper of blue that makes yellowed linen read as white to the human eye, and every washerwoman in England knows it, and every mistress in England pretends not to. And then the starch for the collars and the cuffs and the pillow slip edges, mixed from powder with boiling water, stirred smooth, no lumps. Because a lump of starch ironed into a collar looks like a blister and reads like a slur, and the collars get dipped and worked and wrung, and by now, look at the light. The light through the fogged glass has gone from grey to thin gold. The morning is gone. It went into the water. Ernest is fretting in his basket. You feed him sitting on the upturned rinsing tub, your back against the warm brick of the copper surround. And this is the closest thing to a rest the day has offered. 10 minutes, a baby at your breast and your spine against warm brick, and your eyes close, and you do not sleep, You just go somewhere dark and quiet behind your own face for a few minutes while your body does the feeding without you. Women learn this. It isn't rest, it's a payment against collapse, then the hanging out, and the hanging out is a gamble against the sky. The yard has lines strung crisscross from wall to wall, and your washing day means your lines, and you peg out the sheets and shirts with wooden dolly pegs, reaching up, and the reach is its own toll after the tubs, your shoulders grinding as your arms go over your head, 60, 80, 100 times, and the wet linen slaps coldly against your face and neck as you fight it onto the line. And here is the gamble. This is London. The sky makes soot the way a cow makes milk. If the wind turns and the chimneys of the ironworks 2 streets over blow this way, your whites will be freckled grey by 3 o'clock, and everything, the boiling, the boarding, the wringing, the bluing, everything gets done again, for free. And if it rains, the same. And you cannot stand guard because the ironing is waiting, so you post the only sentry you have, which is Mrs. Kelly at her window, who will pull your line if the rain comes, as you would pull hers, as the widow Price would pull either of yours, and this net of small favours between tired women is the only insurance policy any of you will ever hold, and it has never once been written down, and it has never once failed you. Now, while it dries, ironing, and before the ironing, the walk. And before the walk, we should talk about money, because it's Wednesday, and Wednesday is the day the money runs out. Here is the arithmetic of your household, and I want you to hold it in your head the way you hold it in yours, which is to say, always, every waking minute, the way other people hold a tune. In a decent week, John brings home perhaps 15 shillings from the docks. In a bad week, 5. The rent for your one room is 4 shillings and 6pence, and the rent is sacred. The rent is paid before food, before boots, before medicine, because the rent collector comes Monday morning and 2 weeks behind means the door, and the door means the street, and the street means the workhouse, and we will come to the workhouse. Coal, 1 shilling and 3pence. Burial insurance, 1 penny a week per child, 5pence the family, paid to the man from the Prudential who knocks every Friday, and you pay it before you buy meat. Every family in this street pays it before meat, because the one unbearable thing, the one thing past all bearing, is a pauper funeral, your child in a parish coffin in a shared grave, and 1 penny a week is what it costs to be able to sleep at all, and food for 7 out of what's left. Bread is the floor of every meal, a quartern loaf at 5pence halfpenny, and your family goes through 9 or 10 of them a week. Potatoes, tea, sugar, a screw of this and a scrape of that. Meat on Sunday, a cheap cut, and the leavings of it stretch through Monday, and by Wednesday today the larder is bread, dripping, 4 potatoes, half an onion, and the heel of the cheese, and there are 2 more days before John's wages, if there are wages, and this is where you come in. This is where you have come in every week for 13 years, the pawnshop. You go up the 52 steps and take John's black Sunday suit down from the nail behind the door, and you fold it into the wicker basket under a cloth. With his boots, the good boots, the Sunday boots, and if you're feeling the pinch hard, and this week you are, the sheets off your own bed go in as well, the good pair, the pair you were married with, and you carry the basket to Balcom's on the corner of the next street, in the side door, because Balcom's has a side door precisely so that respectable women don't have to be seen going in the front, and half the doors in this trade are side doors. The whole street is a machine for managing shame, and inside there is a queue of women. There is always a queue of women. Wednesday and Thursday are the great pawning days of the English poor, and Saturday is the great redeeming day, and this tide of blankets and suits and wedding rings flows out and back, every single week, as regular as the tide at Wapping Stairs. Mr. Balcombe knows you. Mr. Balcombe knows everyone. He's not a monster. He's worse than a monster. He's a reasonable man operating a reasonable business at 25% a year, and he unfolds John's suit with 2 fingers and looks at it over his spectacles, and he has seen this suit perhaps 300 times. He could describe its darns from memory, and he says, as he says most weeks, 3 and 6. And you say, as you say most weeks, it's worth 10. And he says it was worth 10 in 1879. 4 shillings then for the suit and the boots, and a shilling on the sheets, and he writes the tickets in his slow copper plate, and the tickets go into your purse, and the tickets are now among the most important papers your family owns, because if a ticket is lost, the goods are lost. And Saturday night, when John is paid, you will come back and hand across 5 shillings and 5 pence to redeem what you pawned. For 5, and the 5 pence is the interest, and the 5 pence is why Mr. Balcombe has a house in Dalston with a garden. 5 pence at a time, from 10,000 women, forever. And understand this clearly, because the gentleman with notebooks got this one wrong too. For years, this is not fecklessness. This is not the poor being bad with money. This is the poor being brilliant with money. This is a family with no bank, no credit, and no margin, using a black suit as a savings account, making the same 5 shillings do the work of 10 by moving it back and forth across a counter, week after week, with never one mistake, because one mistake is hunger. Your accounts have no ledger. Your ledger is your skull. You know, to the farthing, what is owed to the corner shop, what is owed to the milkwoman, what the tickets will cost to redeem, what the insurance man takes Friday, what the rent takes Monday, and you carry the whole structure balanced in your head at all times the way you carry the water up the stairs, and if the Chancellor of the Exchequer had to run his budget the way you run yours, with a hostile board of 7 stomachs auditing him 3 times a day, he would be found weeping in a hedge by Friday. 5 shillings in your purse, you buy carefully on the way home. Potatoes, a pound of pieces from the butcher, the scraps and trimmings, bones with rumours of meat on them, 6 pence the lot, an onion, a cabbage going soft that the greengrocer lets go for a penny, because you take the baby's sock off Ernest's fist and show him the fat little hand and say something pleasant, and you're not above deploying the baby. No woman in this street is above deploying the baby. The baby is a business asset, and a loaf, and a screw of tea, and you stop at the corner shop to pay 3 pence off your slate. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough. Because the slate is a living relationship and it must be fed. The corner shop's credit is the only thing between this street and famine in a bad week, and every woman here tends her credit like a garden. And on the way home you pass her, the Irish woman from Dorset Street, Bridget. She has a basket of washing on her hip, someone's washing delivered, and your eyes meet for a moment, and there is no hatred in it. That's the thing no outsider would believe. There is no hatred in it at all. She is you. She has 5 children and a husband on the casual docks, and hands like yours and a back like yours, and the penny less that she charges is not spite. It is her own arithmetic, her own Wednesday, and both of you know that the 2 of you are being run against each other by women in better houses, the way costermongers run their donkeys, and both of you know there's not one single thing either of you can do about it. So you nod to each other, one carrier of 30 pounds to another, and you walk on. The poor fighting the poor over the leavings, That's the machine. You've been a part in it so long you can hear it turn. Home. 52 steps. The fire wants feeding. Ernest wants feeding. The pot goes on with the bones and the onion and water, and it will mutter there all afternoon, becoming the soup that is tonight's supper. And this is the deep cunning of the poor kitchen, the pot that runs alongside the day, cooking while you do everything else, extracting every last secret from a sixpence of scraps, and the smell of it will climb through the whole house by 4 o'clock, and Mrs. Aronson below you will know exactly what you paid for those bones just from the smell, the way you know her Friday fish to the farthing, because in a house like this there is no privacy of any kind, not of sound, not of smell, not of grief. You have heard every quarrel in this building for 14 years, and they have heard yours, and there is a strange mercy in it, because there is also no privacy of hunger. And when a family in this house is truly going under, the house knows before the family admits it, and a covered plate appears on a landing, no note, no knock, and no one ever mentions it afterward. Now the irons. The washing by mid-afternoon has dried, or dried enough, hauled in from the lines with your arms full and your face pressed into linen that smells of soap and smoke, always both. The smoke gets into everything. You cannot hang a sheet in Spitalfields without London signing its name on it. And now the table is cleared and a folded blanket goes over it, and a scorched old sheet over the blanket, and the irons, the flat irons, the sade irons, sad being the old word for solid, and solid is the word 6 pounds of dead metal apiece, and you have 3 of them, and they go onto the trivet by the fire in rotation, 2 heating while 1 works. You test the heat with a licked finger, 1 quick tap, the hiss telling you cool, right, or scorching, and you learn that hiss the way a musician learns pitch, because the space between right and scorching is about a minute of fire, and a scorched shirt is a bought shirt, and Mrs. Fenwick's shirts cost more than you make in a week. Then you spread the first shirt on the table, and you take up the iron, and now for 2 hours, 3, you do the thing that looks, through a window, like the gentlest work of the day, and is not. 6 pounds gripped, lifted, driven back and forth with the shoulder, not the wrist. The wrist dies in a year if you iron from the wrist, and set back on the trivet, and the next iron taken up, hot, always testing, and the shirt turned, sleeves, yoke, cuffs doubled and pressed hard, collar last, the starched collar that must come out smooth and stiff and faintly gleaming, and you lean your whole slight weight onto the iron for that gleam, and the heat comes up off the cloth into your face in waves, and the fire at your back keeps the irons coming, so you stand in a corridor of heat, hearth behind, steam before, hour after hour, your right shoulder slowly filling with sand, your feet in the dead woman's boots, going from ache to burn to a kind of ringing numbness on the bare boards, and there is a rhythm to it, thump and glide, the iron knocking softly on the table's bones, and Ernest, in the drawer, is lulled by it, has always been lulled by it. All 5 of your babies were ironed to sleep, and you catch yourself sometimes in the 3rd hour, gliding 6 pounds of hot metal along a seam in strokes timed exactly to the breathing of a sleeping child. And if there is a picture of your whole life truer than that one, you haven't seen it. Lizzie comes home from school with the little ones as the light goes copper, and Lizzie, without being asked, without a word, takes the folded pile as it grows and papers and wraps it, and minds Ernest and stirs the pot and slices bread, 11 years old, and here is a thing you know and try not to look at directly. Lizzie is quick. Her teacher told you so on the pavement outside the school, in the manner of someone delivering wonderful news. Lizzie is the quickest girl in her standard. Lizzie could sit for a scholarship. And you stood on the pavement and smiled and felt the words go into you like cold water into a boot, because you know what happens to the quickest girl in a laundress's family, and so do you, listening to this if you're honest. In 3 years she'll be in service or in the rag trade or at a jam factory 10 hours a day, and her quickness will go where yours went, into keeping a family's books in her skull and reading a mistress's face like weather, into survival, which eats cleverness and never once says thank you. Nothing in your day will hurt you the way that thought hurts you. Not the back, not the hands, and so you set it down, the way you set down the buckets on the landing. You can carry it again tomorrow. The folded washing goes back into the wicker basket, layered with the papers, collars on top in their own cloth, and now the delivery. The 1.25 miles to Mrs. Fenwick's tall house, the basket riding your hip and shoulder, and the streets at this hour are a river of women exactly like you. Baskets and bundles going in every direction. Finished shirts moving one way, dirty linen moving the other, matchboxes going to Bryant and May, sewn trousers going back to the sweater's warehouse, and every basket balanced on a hip that also carried the water and will also carry the child, and the gentlemen going home from their offices thread through this river of burdened women without seeing one single one of them. And I mean that exactly. Not rudeness, something stranger, a trained blindness. The eye slides off a woman with a basket the way it slides off a lamppost. She is infrastructure. And you feel it as you walk. The specific sensation of being infrastructure. It is not even unpleasant anymore. It is like being weather. You move through the crowd inside a small pocket of non-existence, and there are days when the pocket feels almost like rest. Mrs. Fenwick's house has a front door and an area door, and the area door is yours. Down the iron steps to the basement, and the cook lets you in, and you stand in the kitchen. You're not asked to sit. You're never asked to sit. You have delivered washing to this house for 6 years, and your body has never once touched its furniture. And presently Mrs. Fenwick descends, and Mrs. Fenwick is not a cruel woman. Understand that. She is worse. She is an ordinary one, and she lifts the top pillow slip and holds it to the gas light, and turns a collar over and runs her thumbnail along a cuff. And this takes 4 minutes. 4 minutes of silence in which 14 hours of your labour stands in the dock awaiting verdict, and you watch her thumbnail with your heart actually moving in your chest. Because everything, the rent, the slate, the tickets at Balcom's, everything stands behind that thumbnail, and at last she says, in the voice of a woman conceding a point in an argument no one was having, "That will do, Reeve. That will do." And the 2 shillings are counted into your palm, coin by coin, small and warm, and she mentions at the door, mildly, as one mentions the weather, that Mrs. Elphinstone at number 9 is trying an Irish woman who is very reasonable indeed, and you understand the sentence perfectly. It is not information. It is a bit, slipped between your teeth, a little tug on the rein, and you say, "Yes, ma'am," and you climb the area steps into the dusk, 2 shillings richer, 1 notch more owned. And it's on the walk home, with the empty basket light as a lie on your hip, that the day breaks its routine, because the streets are wrong. You notice it the way you notice everything sideways with the back of the mind. Too many people standing still. Knots of women at corners, not walking, talking, close-headed. A boy runs past you, actually runs, in boots too big, and boys run everywhere always, but he is running towards something, and then you turn into your own street, and the knot of women is at your own door, at the mouth of your own passage, Mrs. Kelly and the Widow Price and a dozen more, and every face turns toward you at once, and the world goes narrow and cold, and you count with your eyes before you can even think. Lizzie in the doorway, Ada's small head at her waist. George, George, where is George? And Mrs. Kelly is already coming toward you with her hands out, and her hands out is the worst thing you've ever seen, and she says, quick, before your legs can finish going to water. He's alive, Martha. He's alive. But there's been a smash at the corner, a brewer's dray. The horses bolted at the crossing by the board school, and the children were coming out, and George is inside. The parish doctor is with him. It's his leg, Martha. It's his leg. You do not remember the 52 steps. You will never remember them. You're simply in the room, and the room is full of people, which is how catastrophe announces itself in a street like this. The room fills, and George is on your bed, on the good bed. Someone has put him on the good bed, and his face is the colour of the boiled linen, grey-white with 2 burning patches, and his lower leg is wrong. You see it in a quarter of a second, and your body understands it before your mind is allowed to. The shin has a bend in it, where God put no bend. And the doctor, young, tired, his cuffs off and his sleeves rolled, is kneeling on your floor among your buckets with his hands moving over the leg gently. And George is making a sound that you have never heard him make, a low steady sound like a pigeon, over and over, and the sound goes into your chest and stays there. It is living in your chest right now, tonight. Years later, as you fall asleep, it never left. Broken, the doctor says. Both bones of the lower leg, the tibia and the fibula, and he says the words to you slowly, the way his training told him to speak to the poor, and then he looks at your face and sees that slow is not required, and speaks like a man. A clean enough break, he thinks. The skin not pierced, and that, he says, is the whole of the luck in this room, because a broken leg with the skin whole mostly mends, and a broken leg with the bone through the skin, in this year of 1888, in this city, before anything you would recognise as medicine, kills as often as it heals. He will set it now. He needs the table cleared, and he needs light, and he needs 2 people to hold the boy, and he needs, and here it comes, he needs splints and bandages, and he mentions, not unkindly, because he is not unkind, merely drowning, that he is the parish doctor, and the parish supplies his visit, but not much else. And something in the way he says the parish makes the whole room go still for a moment, because the parish is a word with a shadow, and every adult in the room can see the shadow, and we're coming to it. But first, watch this. Watch what the street does. The Widow Price has your fire built up and both kettles on before the doctor finishes speaking. Mrs. Kelly is gone and back in 4 minutes with a bottle brandy, real brandy. From where? Don't ask, never ask. And a clean sheet, her own, off her own bed, and she's tearing it into strips without being asked, tearing up her own sheet, which is to say tearing up half a crown she does not have. And old Mr. Dunn from the ground floor sends up by way of a child the 2 straight laths he keeps behind his cupboard, and every wash-house in this building knows those laths have set 3 arms and 2 legs before tonight. They are the street's bones, communal property of disaster, and Mrs. Aronson has taken Ernest and Ada into her room, among her own 6, and a boy has already been sent running to Wapping to stand at the dock gate and catch John the second the shift ends, and none of this was organised. Nobody stood in the middle of the room giving orders. It assembled itself silently, out of long practice, the way your hands make the fire in the dark, because this street has no hospital fund and no telephone and no ambulance worth the name. This street has only itself, and it has drilled for this night its whole life without ever calling it a drill. The setting of the leg you will not be told about in detail, and not because I am sparing you. Because you were there, and you held his shoulders, and Lizzie, 11 years old, held the lamp and held it steady, and I want that recorded somewhere as some book, that on a Wednesday night in Spitalfields a girl of 11 held a lamp perfectly steady for 11 minutes while her brother screamed and then went and was sick in the yard quietly, alone, and came back in with the lamp trimmed. Put her in the histories. She held the light. Afterward the room empties as fast as it filled, because everyone in it has their own pot on and their own children unwatched, and the doctor washes his hands in your basin and rolls down his sleeves, and now comes the second break of the evening, the one with no splint for it. The boy must lie still, he says. 6 weeks, perhaps 8. The leg must not bear weight, and it must be watched, and the boy must be fed, and fed properly, he says. Meat, milk. The bone is knitting, and the knitting must be paid for in food, and he says this standing in a room where he has already counted with the doctor's eye the 4 potatoes and the pot of bones, and he knows exactly what he is prescribing and exactly that it is not there, and you see it cost him something to say it anyway. And then he says the other thing. There is the infirmary, he says. The infirmary would take the boy. They would feed him and nurse him, and it would cost you nothing. And the room goes very quiet, because the infirmary, he means, is the workhouse infirmary. The infirmary is a wing of the workhouse. And now we've arrived, and I need you to understand this place, because it is the black star this whole day has been orbiting. The thing every choice you've made since 5 this morning was made in the shadow of. The workhouse, the union, the house, as the street calls it, the way you'd say the grave. It stands 10 minutes' walk from where your son is lying, a great grey pile behind a wall, and it is not a prison, officially, and it is not a punishment, officially. It is relief. It is what the law of England, since the Great Cold Reform of 1834, offers a family that goes under. Not money in your hand, not bread at your door, or as little of that as the guardians can manage, but the offer, always open, of the house. And the house was designed, and this is not my rhetoric, this is the stated principle of the men who built it. They wrote it down. It was designed to be worse than the worst life outside it, so that no one would come in who had any strength left to stay out. Less eligibility, they called it. A door built to be dreaded on purpose and then held open, politely, forever. And you know what is through that door everyone in this street knows. The knowledge is in the water here. Through that door, a family stops being a family. Men's ward, women's ward, children's ward. John one side, you the other, George and Lizzie and Ada sorted by age and sex into wards where you may see them, perhaps, an hour on Sunday, under supervision. The uniform, so the street knows you at a glance ever after. The oakum-picking, old tar rope teased apart until the fingers bleed. Work invented to be work. The food weighed to the ounce by a printed table. Your own clothes taken and stoved, your hair inspected, your name entered in the book of paupers, and the word pauper is the true price of admission, because pauper is not poor, poor is a condition, pauper is a status, a legal civic degradation, and it clings, it follows the children, it is written on the family the way the smoke writes on the sheets. Old women in this street who have half a loaf a week and no fire will die in their rooms rather than go in. and the street calls that pride and honours it, and buries them by subscription. A penny a door. So when the doctor says the word infirmary, kindly, sensibly, he is holding out a spoon of medicine with that in it, and he knows it, and you know it. And you look at George, grey on the bed with his splintered leg, your quick-tempered, sparrow-boned 9-year-old who cannot now walk, or work, or be left for 6 weeks in a household whose whole engine is that everyone works and no one is home, and the two futures stand in your one room plain as two doors, and you say, and you hear your own voice come out flat and certain and older than you are, "No thank you, doctor. We'll keep him here. We'll manage. We'll manage." 2 words. The complete political philosophy of the English poor. The doctor nods. He expected nothing else. You can see he hears those 2 words in rooms like this every night of his life. At the door he pauses, and he says one more thing, quietly, and it is the thing that will matter. Though you don't know it yet, he says, "The dray belonged to the brewery, missus. Truman's, there were witnesses. The gate was left off the crossing, and the drayman was where he shouldn't have been. Some of the school board men saw it." He looks at you a moment, tired, level. "You needn't only be managing," he says. "You could also be owed." And then he is gone, down the 52 steps, out into the dark, onto the next room and the next, and you stand there with the word owed sitting strangely in the air, because in 34 years of life, no one has ever once suggested that the world might owe you anything at all. John comes home at 9, running, the boy from the dock gate having found him, and he stands over the bed, breathing hard with the dock still on him, tar and grain dust and river mud, and he puts his hand on George's hair, once, very lightly, the enormous careful gentleness of a heavy-handed man, and then he sits down on the stool by the fire and puts his face in his hands, and you let him have 1 minute of that, 1 full minute, and then you put the soup in front of him, because grief is a luxury with the schedule in this house like everything else, and while he eats you lay it out for him, the whole new arithmetic, in a low voice so the children won't hear the sums their lives are made of. 6 weeks, minimum, of a child who must be minded every hour, which means Lizzie off school to mind him, and there goes her attendance. And here comes the school board man with his fines and his questions. Or it means you working with one eye and half your speed. Meat and milk, the doctor said, which is 3-4 extra shillings a week that do not exist. And the deep fear, the one you don't say even in the low voice. If John's leg had been the one under the dray, or if his cough turns worse, if the floor and the weather fail in the same month, then it is the house, the door held open, the family sorted into wards. You have seen it take families off this street. It always starts exactly here, exactly like this, with one wheel coming off. And then you tell him what the doctor said about the brewery and about the word owed, and John's face closes like a fist. Because John knows what happens to dock labourers whose families make claims against companies. There is a list. Everyone swears there is a list. And whether the list is paper or only understanding makes no difference. The foreman's pointing finger simply stops finding your face at the morning call. That is the trap fully sprung. The money is owed by exactly the kind of people who can starve you for asking. He says, "No, Martha, we don't go begging to Truman's." And you say it isn't begging, and he says anything the poor ask for is begging. That's what poor means. And you both go to bed angry inside 3 feet of each other, and above the smell of the soup and the soap, you lie awake doing sums in the dark, and the sums do not come out. No matter how you turn them, the sums do not come out. And sometime after the church clock strikes 1 you make, alone, in the dark, in flat defiance of your husband, the single most dangerous decision of your adult life. You will go and see the school board man. Now, 30 years you would need to understand how strange that decision is, so let me give it to you quickly. The school board visitor, the attendance man, is the closest thing the state has to a face in your life, and his face has never once brought good news. He's the man who finds you when George is absent. He is the man whose knock means trouble. Every reflex in your street says hide from that knock. But you have noticed things about this particular one, Mr. Latimer, a dry, stooping man with ink on his fingers. You have noticed that he fined the Hartley family, and then, quietly, got the eldest Hartley girl a place at a decent house in Hackney, that he speaks to the children as though they were people, that he once stood in the rain on this very street writing in his book, while 2 guardians of the poor waited in a cab and made them wait. You have read him, over the years, the way you read Mrs. Fenwick's thumbnail, because reading the powerful is the one scholarship your life has given you, and your reading says, this one can be spoken to, and it is Mr. Latimer. 2 days later, in the corner of the schoolroom after the children are gone, chalk dust in the air and your hands folded in front of you so he won't see them shaking, who listens to the whole of it, the dray, the gate that was off, the drayman where he shouldn't have been, the 6 weeks, the doctor's word owed, and who says, at the end of it, the sentence that turns the whole story. He says, I saw it, Mrs. Reeve. I was standing at the school door. I saw the whole thing, and I have already written an account of it in my book because I write everything in my book. And my book, he says, and here something dry and bright comes into his eyes. My book has been accepted in a coroner's court and a magistrate's court, and a brewery's lawyer would very much rather it never be accepted anywhere again. There is a society, he says, that takes up such cases for the poor, and there is an inspector of the school board who dislikes Truman's for his own reasons, and there is above all the fact that the brewery would pay a great deal not to have gates, and draymen discussed in a courtroom in a year when London is already angry. They will not want to fight, they will want you to go away, and it will cost them money to make you go away. He closes his book. Say nothing on the street, he says. Sign nothing they bring you, and tell your husband his name need never appear. The claim is the child's, and the child's claim can be brought by his mother. By his mother. You walk home through the market crowds with those 3 words in your basket, heavier than any washing, and for the first time in 19 years the streets of London look very slightly different, as though a wall you had lived against your whole life had turned out to have a seam in it. What follows takes 5 weeks, and you will spare each other most of it, but hold these pieces. The man from the brewery who comes on the 2nd Tuesday, glossy hat, kind voice, a paper in his pocket and a sovereign, 1 whole sovereign, gleaming on your table like a little sun, ready to be yours the moment you sign, and how your hand actually moved toward the pen, because a sovereign is 20 shillings, and 20 shillings is a month of rent, and how you heard Mr. Latimer's dry voice in your head, sign nothing, and pushed the paper back across the table with 2 fingers, and said, in a voice you did not recognize as your own, that your boy's leg was not for sale by the pound. And the man's kind voice stopped being kind for just a moment, 1 flash, like a fish turning, and in that flash you saw exactly how much they did not want the courtroom, and you knew, the way you know the iron's heat by the hiss, that Latimer had read them right. Hold the neighbours, who never once asked, and always knew, and who kept a plate going up those stairs for a boy who needed meat, a rasher here, a cup of milk there, a marrow bone from the widow Price who told Mrs. Kelly, who told the street that the Reeves were not to want while the boy knitted. Old Lizzie, who taught George his letters and his sums flat on his back out of her own school books, so that he came out of that bed 6 weeks later the second quickest child in his standard and mad about it forever. And hold the evening in the 5th week when Mr. Latimer climbed the 52 steps himself, stepping over the broken board without being told, because he had written that board in his book years ago, and laid on your table a letter from the society's solicitor, and inside the letter was the brewery's offer, made quietly, on condition of quiet. £15. £15. You had to sit down. You, who were never asked to sit, sat down in your own room. It is not justice, Latimer said. Justice would be more and louder, but it is £15. And £15 in your ledger, the one you keep in your skull, you knew instantly and exactly what £15 was. It was the tickets at Balcom's redeemed and the suit home on its nail for good. It was the slate at the corner shop wiped clean to zero for the first time in 11 years. It was George's boots mended by an actual cobbler, and a new bed frame with 4 legs, and meat twice a week through the winter of the mending, and, resting under the loose floorboard wrapped in oilcloth, a thing your family has never in its history possessed, a margin. 5 whole pounds of margin between you and the open door of the house. It was not the world changing. The tap will still run 2 hours. The copper is still yours on Wednesdays. Mrs. Fenwick will still hold your work to the light. But the knife over the day hangs now a few inches higher. You have room to stumble once. Almost nobody on this street has room to stumble once. And when John, who was wrong and knew it, and was glad to be wrong, asked you quietly one Sunday how you had known to trust the attendance man, of all men you told him the truth. You said, I read him. Same as I read the sky over the wash line, same as I read the mistress's thumbnail, same as I read the coal and the slate and the queue at the tap. It's what I do all day, John. Somebody finally paid me for it. But that is weeks away. All of it. The sovereign and the letter and the margin under the floorboard. Tonight, the night of the break. None of it has happened yet. And the day is not finished with you. Because the day is never finished with you. And I want to take you back into it. Into the hours after the doctor's boots went down the stairs. Because those hours are the truest part of this whole story, and almost nobody has ever written them down. It is 10 o'clock at night. The room is dark except the fire's last red and 1 candle. John sleeps, because John must be at the dock gate at 6:30, or there is nothing at all this week. George sleeps at last, brandy heavy, his splintered leg propped on the rolled shawl, and every time he shifts he makes a small sound in his sleep, and every small sound goes through you like the iron's hiss. Ernest sleeps in his drawer, Lizzie and Ada sleep, 6 people breathing in the dark, and you, at the table, in the candle's little tent of light, take up the second job. Because you have a second job. Almost every woman on this street has a second job, the night job, the job that happens after the day job that happens around the constant job of the children, and yours is trouser finishing. Slop work, the trade calls it. A bundle comes on Thursdays from a sweater's warehouse off Commercial Street. A dozen pairs of trousers, machine sewn in their main seams and needing everything else. The buttons, the buttonholes, the hems, the linings tacked, the ends finished, and for each completed pair you receive 2p halfpenny, and out of that you supply your own thread and your own candle, and if you work quickly, a pair takes 50 minutes, which comes out when you do the sum, and you have done the sum, to something like 2p an hour minus the candle. There are gentlemen in this city this year writing pamphlets that ask why the poor do not save. You thread the needle by candlelight, and threading the needle is the first battle, because your eyes at 34 are not what they were. Close work by candle has been sanding them down for years, and your hands, remember your hands, the soda-cracked knuckles, the split at the base of the right thumb that opened again on the washboard this morning, and the needle finds every one of those places as you work. The fine steel sliding through coarse fustian cloth, and fustian is a fighter, dense and stiff. You have to push the needle with the brass thimble and drag it through with a little grip and twist that costs the thumb every single time, and the seams smell of the warehouse, of machine oil and other people's rooms, of the long chain of tired women this cloth has already passed through, and your stitches go in small and even and fast, because the sweater's man checks. He pulls a seam in 3 places with a little jerking motion he enjoys, and a burst seam is a rejected pair, and a rejected pair is 50 minutes of your night. Gone. Stitch, stitch, stitch. The fire ticks as it dies. The candle flame leans and rights itself when the draught comes under the door. Somewhere down the street a drunk is singing the same 4 bars over and over, further and further away. Your back, which has been asking all day, now simply states. There is a point on the left side under the shoulder blade, a coin-sized point that has burned every night for 6 years, and it lights up now like a little lamp right on schedule, and you shift on the stool and it dims and returns, and you sew. Buttonhole. 8 buttonholes a pair, worked in twist, each one a minute and a half of the tightest, smallest work there is, and your eyes water and you blink and hold the cloth a little further off, and sew. And here, in the small hours at the bottom of the day, comes the strangest thing in it, and I will tell it to you straight because it is true. It is almost peaceful. The needle finds a rhythm and the rhythm empties the head. The room is warm still, just and full of the breathing of everyone you love, all of them, for once, in one place, still, safe, fed, asleep, mended so far as you can mend them, and the candle makes its small gold room inside the dark room, and your hands go on without you, and your mind, let off the chain for the first time since 5 this morning, wanders. It goes to Essex sometimes, to a hedgeful of May blossom you stood under at 9 years old, a smell you can still produce, entire at will, 30 years and a whole world later. It goes to Lizzie's teacher on the pavement, saying quickest girl in her standard. It goes nowhere, often, into a grey hum, and the grey hum is the closest thing to a holiday your mind gets, and it takes it. At midnight you tie off the last buttonhole of the 4th pair and bite the thread, because the scissors went blunt and the sharpener cost a penny, and you fold the trousers on the pile and you sit for a moment with your hands, at last, empty. 4p halfpenny earned since the house went to sleep, near enough. You bank the fire with the wetted small coal and the ash, building the little black mound that will hold red at its heart until 5, if you have built it right, and you have built it right 10,000 times. You check George's foot below the splint the way the doctor showed you, warm, pink, blood-moving, good. You stand over each child one moment, counting them the way you've counted them every night of their lives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the oldest arithmetic there is. Then you take off the dead woman's boots at last, and the floor is cold, and you lie down in your clothes between your children, in the dip in the mattress that is the shape of your own body, worn there by 3,000 knights, and the last thing you hear, as the church clock strikes the half-hour, is the small dry sound of a shutter swinging somewhere, and then nothing. Because you do not so much fall asleep as get pulled under, the way a stone gets pulled under, and 4.5 hours later, the clock will strike 5 and it will all begin again. And it does begin again, and again. And I want you to feel the shape of that, the wheel of it, because a single day of this life, told once, sounds like an ordeal. And the truth is worse and stranger than an ordeal. The truth is that it is Tuesday. It is only always Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Thursday. One bead on a string of 10,000 beads, and the ordeal is to string. Monday is other people's washing brought in, and your own family's washing, which happens, if it happens, last of everyone's. The washerwoman's children in the greyest shirts on the street, the cobbler's children barefoot, the oldest joke in the world and nobody laughing. Tuesday is the charring 3 houses, grates black-leaded on your knees before the families rise, doorsteps whitened with hearthstone, a shilling and your dinner, eaten standing in a scullery. Wednesday, the copper. And you know Wednesday now, you have lived Wednesday. Thursday, the trouser bundle, the mangling taken in, the turning of the mangle's iron wheel by the hour for the neighbours at a penny. The basket, the great wheel with its worn wooden handle that took the top joint of Mrs. Kelly's finger in 1881. Everyone on this street knows a mangle story. Every trade here keeps a small museum of fingers. Friday, the insurance man, the cleaning of your own room, the mending, the boots, the hair. Saturday, the great day, the market at night, John's wages, if wages there be, the redemption at Balcom's, the suit carried home under the cloth. Sunday, the one cooked dinner, the one sitting down, church for the children, and the 2 hours in the afternoon when the street goes quiet and the women stand in their doorways with their arms folded in their shawls, not working, just standing, watching the light move down the bricks. And that standing, that folded arm doorway standing, is the leisure of the poor woman of London, the whole of it. And if you had told her it would one day be photographed and put in books, she would have laughed at you, and her laugh would have had the tap cue in it, and the copper's steam, and the 52 stairs, and it would have been a better history of England than most of the ones that got written. Let me walk you through Saturday night, though, before we let the seasons turn, because Saturday night is the one night this world lights up, and you have earned it, and so has she. Saturday night the wages are in, such as they are, and the whole of the East End goes to market, and the market is not a place, it is a weather. It descends on the streets at dusk and possesses them till midnight. The naphtha flares come out over the stalls, great roaring orange flames on iron stands, and their light is like nothing you've ever seen, hot, jumping, theatrical. It makes every heap of herrings look like treasure, and every butcher look like a demon king, and the noise builds until it is a single vast animal sound with words in it. Meat, meat, buy, lovely oranges, chestnuts all hot, and the smells ride over each other in waves, fried fish and vinegar, roasting chestnuts, oranges, gas, naphtha, crowd, and you move through it with your basket and your purse gripped against the dips, whose harvest night this is, and you shop the way a general fights. Because Saturday night late is when the prices break. The butchers have no ice worth speaking of, and Sunday is coming, and meat that doesn't sell tonight is meat that kills somebody by Tuesday. So from 10 o'clock the butchers begin to auction the day down, holding joints up in the flare light, shouting them cheaper and cheaper, and the women stand in a ring watching with folded arms. 40 housekeeping ledgers running silently and 40 skulls, each one knowing to the minute how long to wait, and the nerve it takes, the iron nerve, to watch the piece you want and let it hang, and let it drop from 10p to 8p while some other woman's hand may rise at any second. This is poker played nightly, for the family's one meat meal, and you are good at it. And when your hand does go up and the joint comes down to you at 7p, there is a satisfaction in it as real as any deal done in the city that morning, and considerably better earned. And then, some Saturdays, if the week held, there is saucer of stewed eels, or a twist of chestnuts shared out among the children on the walk home, hot through the paper, through the glove that isn't there, into the cracked hands, and the eating of them under the flares with the whole roaring golden street around you. And John, some Saturdays, in a good week, puts his hand under your elbow through the crowd, an unnecessary hand, a courting hand 19 years on, and says nothing, and neither do you. That is the other thing the notebooks kept missing, and I don't want you to miss it, because without it, none of the rest is true. This life is hard past modern imagining, and the people living it are not sad past modern imagining. This street is loud with jokes. The tap queue laughs more mornings than not, and the laughter is black and quick and would scald a curate. There are songs, and feuds better than theatre, and the pleasure of work done properly even when the work is brutal. The pillow slip coming off the iron like new snow, the fire caught on the first match, the line of washing filling and lifting all together in a wind, which is a beautiful thing, one of the truly beautiful things. And she stops sometimes, your Martha, 1 second, 2, in the yard, and watches her whites bell and swing against the moving grey sky, and something in her chest lifts with them, and then she goes back in, because the irons are heating. Joy here is like the meat, bought cheap, late, in small amounts, and cooked long. But it is real, and they are owed it, and they take it. The seasons wheel. Summer, and the room under the roof becomes an oven, and the water queue lengthens, and the smell of the street ripens into something with a body to it, and the flies own the butcher's window, and this is when the fever comes, if it is coming, summer diarrhea they call it, and it is the babies it takes. And there is a fortnight in August when the drawer where Ernest sleeps is watched with a fear you can taste. 4 times a night the hand to the small forehead, and this year, it passes by, and passes 3 doors down instead, and you stand at the graveside with the street behind the Aronsons the way the street stood behind you, and the penny a door subscription buries the child properly with a name plate, because that matters. It matters more than food, and if you cannot understand why, then you have never been poor in the specific way these people are poor, where the plate with the name on it is the one sentence the world lets you write. Autumn, and the fogs begin, the true fogs. Coal smoke thickened until noon is dusk, and the flares are lit all day, and the washing cannot dry outdoors for weeks at a stretch, so it dries indoors, strung on lines across the one room, and the family lives inside its own damp laundry like a ship inside its sails, and everything smells of wet wool. And John's cough wakes with the fog and speaks all night. Winter, and the water in the basin freezes, and the tap itself freezes and must be thawed with kettles carried down. A whole street's kettles for one brass tap, and the coal money fights the food money hand to hand every single week, and the children sleep in their clothes under every garment the family owns, coats as blankets, the dead woman's boots standing guard by the bed, and the fire is banked so hard and watched so close it might be a sick child itself, and spring again, and the first day the washing can go out again, the first true drying day of the year, is a festival no calendar names, every line in the yard full at once, the whole grey chasm between the buildings suddenly white and moving and alive, and the women stand a moment in their doorways with folded arms and watch it, all of them, the same lifted chest, the same 2 seconds before the irons, and George's leg knits, a little crooked, a little weatherwise. He will know rain in that shin his whole long life, and he has a long life, though she will never know it. That's the thing about her that breaks you if you let it. She works entirely in the dark as to results. She will never know that George lives to be 81, that he comes back from one war with all his limbs and sees his sons come back from another. She will never know that Lizzie, the lamp holder, the quickest girl in her standard, goes into service at 14 just as feared, and at 31, in a changed world, stands in a committee room as a union woman for the laundresses, actual union, and reads, figures out of a book in a steady voice to gentlemen who have to listen, figures about pounds lifted per day and hours stood per week, her mother's biography recited as evidence. Martha plants every seed of that in the dark on 2p an hour and never sees one leaf of it. Nobody thanks her at the time, and nobody thanks her later, because by the time the later comes she's out of reach of thanks, and the world she carried on her hip has learned to call itself self-made. So the thanks falls to us, at this strange distance, in this strange way. Let it be here, then, on the record. She held the light too. Before we let the day go, walk the street with her one more time, in the ordinary weeks after the leg has mended, and look through the windows as you pass, because behind every window on this street a woman is doing this same impossible sum in a different trade, and each trade has its own weather, its own wounds, its own smell, and together they are the answer to the question in this episode's title, the real answer, which is that there was no one thing poor Victorian women did all day. There was everything, and it was all at once. Behind the first window matchboxes, Mrs. Doyle and her 3 daughters, the youngest of them 6, sit around a table folding and pasting matchboxes for Bryant and May, and the rate this year is 2p farthing a gross, and a gross is 144 completed boxes, tray and case and sandpaper strip. And to make anything like a living wage, a woman and her children must produce over 1,000 boxes a day, 7 boxes every 3 minutes, 10 hours at a stretch. And they do, their hands moving in a blur that no machine yet built can match. And the paste is flour paste, and it must be bought out of the 2p farthing, and the smell of that room is paste and phosphorus and sugar paper, and the boxes take over everything. They dry on the bed, on the mantel, on the stairs. The family lives inside a rising tide of its own piecework, and this very year, this actual summer of 1888, the match girls at the factory itself, the ones with the yellow-tinged faces and the phossy jaw stories, will walk out on strike, 1,400 of them, and to everyone's astonishment, including their own, they will win, and it will be one of the first cracks in the wall, and Mrs. Doyle will read about it, or have it read to her, and fold and paste, and say nothing you could print. Behind the next window, sack mending. Old Mrs. Gantry, 70 if she is a day, sits by her light with a sailmaker's needle and a palm guard, closing rents in coal sacks and grain sacks at a farthing the sack, and the sacks come to her filthy, and leave her filthy, the coal dust in every seam, her room the colour of dusk at all hours, her hands, at 70, still strong enough to drive a needle through double jute, because they have to be. Because Mrs. Gantry's entire pension plan is Mrs. Gantry, and the sacks are what stand between her and the house, and she has told the tap queue more than once, in a voice that ended all discussion, that she will go into the river before she goes into the house. And everyone believes her, and everyone changes the subject, and someone always, somehow, finds her a few extra sacks in a bad week. Behind the third window, a home nursery, which is the polite name. Mrs. Sowerby minds babies, other women's babies, the babies of the women who work the 10-hour days at the jam factory and the shirt factory. 4p a week the baby, 6 babies at a time in one room, and she is a decent one. Mrs. Sowerby, she is clean and careful, and the babies in her room are held and fed, and everyone knows a street where the minding is not decent, where the babies are quieted with a spoonful of Godfrey's cordial, which is treacle and opium and sold over any chemist's counter in the land, and some of those babies are quieted altogether, and the inquests use the phrase overlaid or debility from birth, and the mothers know, and the mothers have no other choice. And that sentence, the mothers have no other choice, is doing more work than any sentence should ever have to do, and the century will end before anyone in power seriously proposes to help them. And behind the fourth window your own, the washerwoman, whom you know. And in the big houses westward, the cooks and the housemaids and the maids of all work, the girls of 13 scrubbing 5 flights of other people's stairs before 6 in the morning, the slaveys, on £8 a year and their keep, 1 afternoon off a month, and your own Lizzie's future among them. And in the workrooms off Commercial Street, the shirt finishers and the trouser hands and the fur pullers, who strip the loose down from rabbit skins 10 hours a day and breathe it, and whose lungs, the doctor's reports say, and there are reports, are grey felt by 40, sweated trades, the reformers call all of this, and there will be an exhibition in 20 years in the West End, where ladies and gentlemen will pay a shilling to walk past live tableaux of these very women doing this very work, matchboxes, shirts, sacks, arranged like exhibits, and the ladies and gentlemen will be genuinely moved, genuinely, and some of them will go home and do something about it, and it will still take Parliament until 1909 to set the first minimum wage in the sweated trades, and when it comes, the women at the tables will have been saying the same one sentence for 60 years, which is, we never wanted charity, we wanted the rate. Once a month or so, the other world comes to look at yours. It comes up the 52 steps in a good grey dress and clean gloves, and it is called the district visitor, or the Bible woman, or the lady from the society, and she is this particular one, Miss Havergal, kind. She is truly kind. Hold on to that. It makes what happens in the room stranger. She sits, she is given the good stool, she must be given the good stool though the good stool is needed, and she asks after the children by name. She has them written in a little book, and she reads a psalm, and she leaves a tract, and sometimes a ticket for soup or coal, and the tickets are real help and you are glad of them, and the whole visit, beginning to end, is conducted in a language in which you are the subject and never once the speaker. She asks whether John is steady, meaning drink. She casts one soft glance around the room, pricing, not cruelly, just automatically, the way you read the sky, and you watch her see the drawer the baby sleeps in, and you watch her decide it is picturesque, and write something in the little book. She advises thrift. She advises boiling the milk. She advises gently fewer children. in a phrasing so wrapped in wool it takes you until evening to unwrap it, and you stand with your hands folded and your face arranged. The face. Every woman on this street owns the face, respectful, receptive, sealed like a jar. And you say yes, miss, and thank you, miss, and the whole time, behind the face, you're doing the sums she has never had to do. And you know, without heat, without even resentment anymore, just as a fact of the world like the fog, that this good woman could not run your household for one single Wednesday, that she would be weeping by the second bucket, that the skills in this room, the fire-built blind, the ledger in the skull, the iron read by its hiss, the meat won at auction, the neighbour net woven over 14 years, would fill a longer book than the one in her lap. And she goes down the stairs believing she has visited the ignorant poor, and she leaves behind her a woman who has just given, for the 10,000th time, a flawless performance in the oldest and least applauded of all the arts of the poor, which is managing the feelings of the fortunate. You close the door. You put the coal ticket carefully behind the clock, because it is worth a shilling, and you are not proud. You are past proud. Proud is a luxury like sugar in your own cup. And you take the tract, and you look at it a moment, and it goes where the tracts go, folded into neat squares, onto the nail in the yard privy, and that is not blasphemy, that is economy. And if the recording angel keeps accounts the way you keep accounts, and you suspect he must, then he laughed and wrote it down as thrift. And between the market and midnight on Saturday, there is one more errand, the sweetest of the week, and she does it alone, on purpose, and takes her time. The redemption. Back to Balcom's. In the front door this time, because Saturday night the front door belongs to everyone, the whole street is redeeming, and the shop is bright and crowded and almost festive, the shelves emptying instead of filling, and she lays the tickets on the counter with the 5 shillings and 5pence counted out to the coin, and Mr. Balcom, who has taken his profit and knows it, is gracious on Saturday nights the way a winner is gracious, and the suit comes back over the counter folded in its paper, and the boots, and the sheets, and she carries them home through the flare light, with the parcel held against her chest. And there is a feeling in it that no rich person has ever had or ever will. The feeling of the household made whole again, all its pieces back under one roof. The week's dismemberment reversed, and when the suit goes up on its nail behind the door it is not a suit. It is a flag run up over a fort that held out one more week, and she looks at it a moment. Every Saturday 1 moment before she turns to the next thing. 52 weeks a year that flag goes up. Nobody salutes. She does not need them to. She knows what it costs to the farthing, and she's the only one who needs to. And late, very late, when John is asleep and the market's roar has drained out of the streets and the flares are out, she does the last of Saturday's work, which is the making of Sunday. The vegetables peeled ready and standing in water, the children's clothes laid out, the boots given their lick of blacking, the table wiped, the room set as fair as one room holding 7 lives can be set, so that tomorrow, the one slack rope day, owes as little labour as possible. And this is a thing women of her kind did in every century and still do in this one. The paying forward of rest, the building of tomorrow's ease tonight, out of the hour that should itself have been ease, and if you have ever stayed up late so that the morning would be kind to people you love, then you already knew her before this episode ever began. You have been her for an hour at least. She was her for a lifetime, and then there is Sunday. Give her Sunday before we put her to bed. Sunday begins like every day, at the hearth, in the dark, because the fire does not know about the Sabbath, and neither does the baby, and neither in truth does most of the work, only the paid part of it rests. But the pace is different. The rope goes slack by an inch, and the difference of that inch is enormous. The children are scrubbed on Saturday night, all four in turn in the tin bath before the fire in water heated pot by pot. Eldest first down to the baby, the same water, hotted up between customers, and their Sunday clothes, which came home from Balcom's with the suit, are laid out overnight like vestments. And on Sunday morning your family walks to church looking, for 2 hours, like the family the district visitor believes she could make of you. And this is not hypocrisy. It is the opposite of hypocrisy. It is the truth allowed out once a week. The truth being that you are not what the week makes of you, and everyone on the street knows it about everyone else. The whole street shining and stiff in redeemed black, nodding to each other with a formality that would not disgrace a cathedral close, because respectability, remember, is currency, and Sunday morning is the one morning the poor get to spend it on themselves. And Sunday dinner. The joint won at Saturday's auction goes to the bakehouse, because your fire could never roast it and your room has no oven, so you carry it round on the way to church in its tin, and the baker, whose great ovens are banked but hot, roasts the street's dinners in rows for a penny a tin. 40 families' joints browning side by side in one oven, and after church the street walks round to fetch them, and the pavement outside the bakehouse on a Sunday at 1 o'clock, the smell of it, 40 roasting dinners coming out door after door, children walking home behind fathers carrying hot tins at arm's length like crown jewels. That smell is what heaven smelled like to 3 generations of London children. Ask any of them grown old, they will all tell you the same. The bakehouse on Sunday, and their eyes will do the thing eyes do. And at the table, the one sat-down meal of the week, you sit. You actually sit. The meat is carved by John, and the best of it goes down the table in the old order, and you take the outside cut and the gravy-soaked bread, and you are for half an hour at rest at a table, with your children's faces in a row in the light, loud, fed, safe. And if you have banked anything at all this week against the dark, it is banked in this half hour. And then the washing up exists, and it is yours. But even the washing up is Sunday washing up, done slow, with the window light moving, and in the afternoon the doorway, the folded arms, the shawl, the standing, the watching of the street with the other women, an hour of it, the great parliament of the doorways where everything is discussed and nothing is hurried. And this hour, if you total the week honestly, this hour and the market's chestnuts and the 2 seconds watching the washing fill with wind, this is the wage the world actually paid her, over and above survival. She took it. She made it enough. Whether it was enough is a question she had no time for, and left, like so much else, to us. There is one more room in this story, and it is the one nobody was ever shown. So let yourself be shown it now, quietly, because it explains everything about her body that the day has been spending, and where the account stands. 6 pregnancies in 13 years, 5 children living, and one, the second, a girl, 3 days old and gone, whose name was Rose and whose name is never said and never forgotten, and who lies in a proper grave with a proper plate because the burial penny was paid even then, even in the worst year, especially in the worst year. Every one of those confinements happened in this room, or a room exactly like it, on this bed, or a bed exactly like it, with the neighbour net for a hospital, with Mrs. Kelly or the Widow Price or a half-crown midwife who had delivered 1,000 babies and could read a labour the way you read the iron, And no doctor, unless death was in the room, and sometimes not then, because the doctor was 7 and 6, and 7 and 6 was 3 weeks' rent. And women in this street did that sum in the middle of their pains, actually did it. Out loud, wait, don't send yet. And some of them won the bet, and some of them are in the churchyard with their babies in their arms. And this street's mothers went down into that valley on average once every 2 years of their married lives, and climbed back out and were doing the washing again inside the fortnight, because the washing does not know about the valley. And Mrs. Fenwick's linen came due on Wednesdays regardless of what the linen of childbed had seen the week before. And the getting up inside a fortnight was not stubbornness, it was the rate. There is no sick pay in this world. There is no rest cure. There is a fortnight of the neighbour net, the plates on the landing, the other women's daughters minding your fire, the street lending you its hands because it knows, every woman of it knows in her own spine, exactly what you're lying there paying off. And then the net has its own children to feed, and you're up, moving carefully, carrying the water in half buckets for a while, and the body writes it all down. The body is the ledger nobody balances. Teeth, first, a tooth to a child near enough, the old wives' rate of exchange, and near enough true, since every baby was built out of you, and there was no spare in the food to rebuild with. The back, the hands, the veins in the legs, standing there 12 hours. The eyes, spent by candlework. By 34 the account reads like 50. You knew that already. You saw it in the first minute of this day, but now you know what bought what. Nothing was lost. Everything was spent, and spent on purpose. And if you asked her, and someone once did, a lady with a notebook, kind, at the school door, asked her whether she did not feel her health had suffered from her labours. She looked at the lady for a moment with the tap-cue's own face and said, "My health went where the money went, miss. Into the children. You may inspect it there. Put that on the record too. And record one more night, a small one, an ordinary one, because we have given her a broken leg and a brewery and £15. And the truth is that most of the heroism in this life was the size of a thimble, and happened after midnight, a night in the November fog, the true fog, the kind you can hold when Ada, who is 5, wakes with the croup, the barking seal cough that every mother of this century knows in the first half-second, out of the deepest sleep, knows before she's awake, and is up, and the drill runs itself, the kettle onto the coaxed-up fire, the room made warm and wet, the child held upright against your shoulder, inside a tent of shawl and steam, walking, the floorboards one loose creak avoided by habit even now at 2 in the morning, so as not to wake the others, and you walk that child up and down a room 4 steps long for 2 hours, singing under your breath the song your mother sang, which her mother sang, a song from Essex about a fair. And the cough loosens and eases and turns to ordinary breathing somewhere in the 3rd hour, and the child goes heavy and soft against your shoulder in the particular way that means 1, and you stand there in the dead of night, in the steam, in the fog-muffled silence of the enormous city, holding 4 stone of sleeping girl, your back 1 single sheet of fire, and you're as alone as a lighthouse and exactly as necessary, and no one will ever know this happened. It is not in any record. Ada herself will not remember it. It is one of 10,000 nights like it that held this world together, and the history of the 19th century has somehow been written without them, and that, more than the wages and more than the workhouse, is the theft this episode exists to mention. The fog presses at the window like a cat. The kettle sighs. You lay the girl down warm and cover her and stand a moment more, swaying slightly out of pure habit, rocking a child who is no longer in your arms, and every mother listening knows exactly that motion. Across 140 years, exactly that. And then you lie down for what is left of the night, and at 5 the clock strikes, and you get up and light the fire and carry the water, and no one asks how you slept, because everyone in this room slept thanks to you, and thinks the night was quiet. So now let the evening come down for the last time. It is late. It is winter or spring. It is any of the 1,000 nights. It is tonight. The room is dark and warm at its centre, and cold at its walls. The fire is banked into its black mound, with the red heart hidden inside it, holding until morning, because you built it right. You always build it right. The pot is scraped and soaking. The boots stand by the bed, all sizes in a row, largest to least, like a family of sleeping animals. The trousers are folded on the pile, the needle is in its paper, the candle is out, pinched, not blown, because a blown candle spatters wax and wax is money. The tickets are in the purse, and the purse is under the pillow. The ledger in your skull is balanced near enough until Friday, and Friday is a problem for Friday. You lie down between your children in the dip your body has worn in the mattress, and your body begins its nightly settling, one ache reporting after another like watchmen calling the hour. The shoulders, all's well. The coin of fire beneath the left shoulder blade, all's well. The hands, the cracked and scalded hands, lying open on the blanket the way they only lie when everything is finally done. All's well, all's well. The house ticks and breathes around you. Below, the Aronson's fire settles. Above, rain, maybe, beginning small on the slates, and rain at night is nothing but a sound. The washing is in. Let it rain. Listen to the room. 6 people breathing, and every one of those breaths is a thing you carried up the stairs. The bread in them carried, the water that washed them carried, the fire that warms them, coaxed alight in the dark with grey hands, 10,000 mornings running. Nobody saw. That was the first rule, remember. Learned at the hearth before dawn. The work is only visible when it fails. But turn the rule over, here at the bottom of the night, and look at its other face, the face she never had time to look at, and it says this: everything around you that is not failing is her. The whole standing, breathing, mended, fed, and sleeping world of this one room is her work, made new every day and vanished every day like the tide. And if you want a monument, look around you. There is nothing else here. There is only everything. Centuries will pass. The street you know will change past recognition. The room will be condemned and pulled down and built over, and the buildings that replace it will be pulled down and built over in their turn. The tap in the yard will become a tap in the wall, and then hot water at a turn of the wrist. Unimaginable. Oceans of it. Hot water without end. The copper will become a white machine that does the whole of Wednesday in an hour, unattended, humming to itself in the dark. The workhouse will close and stand empty and become, because history has a sense of humour colder than any winter you ever fed a fire through, luxury flats. The 52 steps will be a lift. But this will not change. Somewhere in that future city tonight, this very night, a woman is awake after everyone else is asleep, doing the sums. The numbers are different and the sums are the same. Somewhere a mother is eating last and standing up. Somewhere hands are doing work that will only be noticed if it fails. Some things do not change. The human heart does not change. And the need, at the end of a long day of holding up the invisible world, to lie down at last and be held up by nothing, to let go of every carried thing, that does not change either. So let it come now. Let the day set itself down, the way she set the buckets down on the landing, both at once done. Let the fire hold its red heart under the ash without you. It knows how. You built it right. Let the ledger close in your head, the columns fading, the numbers going soft and grey and gone. Friday is far away. Friday's a country you don't have to visit tonight. Let your hands lie open. They have carried the water and turned the wheel and driven the needle, and held the iron and held the children, and now they are holding nothing, and holding nothing is the finest thing hands ever get to do. Let the sounds go, the rain on the slates going, the settling of the fire going, the breathing of the sleepers going, staying just a little. The way it should, the oldest lullaby there is. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a roof and a banked fire, and every last one of them breathing counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's more than the day promised at 5 this morning. That's enough. Tomorrow there will be water to carry. Tomorrow there will be fires to light and bread to cut and a whole invisible world to hold up one more time. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this, the dip in the mattress that is the shape of you, the dark, soft and complete, the long, slow letting go. Sleep the way she slept, pulled under like a stone, deep past dreaming, down where the aches can't follow. You've earned this rest. She earned it 10,000 times and took it in 4-hour pieces, so take it now, whole, on her behalf. Let the world fade, let the noise quiet, let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. Good night.